Introduction: How agency relationships are formed in real estate. In the previous section, we introduced the foundational principles of agency law and explained how fiduciary duties arise when a real estate professional represents a client. Understanding the legal definition of agency is only the beginning. The next step is understanding how agency relationships are actually created in real estate transactions. In Arizona, agency relationships may arise through written agreements, through the actions of the parties involved, or through the documentation that defines the relationship between the agent and the client. Because agency relationships create fiduciary obligations, it is essential that licensees understand exactly when agency begins and what responsibilities arise once the relationship exists. Many disputes between consumers and real estate professionals occur when a client believes the agent was representing them even though no formal agreement was signed. For this reason, Arizona licensees must clearly establish agency relationships through proper documentation and communication. Understanding the methods of creating agency allows agents to avoid misunderstandings while protecting both the client and the brokerage. A. Express agreements. The most common way to create an agency relationship in Arizona real estate transactions is through an express agreement. An express agreement is a clear, intentional agreement between the principal and the agent that establishes the agency relationship. In real estate practice, express agreements are typically created through written contracts such as listing agreements or buyer representation agreements. These agreements specify the duties of the agent, the scope of representation, and the terms under which the agent will assist the client in a transaction. Express agreements provide clarity for both the client and the agent because the relationship is documented in writing. For example, when a homeowner in Gilbert signs a listing agreement with a brokerage, the seller is establishing an agency relationship with that brokerage and its affiliated licensees. The agreement authorizes the brokerage to market the property, present offers, negotiate terms, and assist the seller in completing the transaction. Similarly, a buyer representation agreement creates an agency relationship between the buyer and the brokerage representing that buyer. Express agreements are considered the safest and most professional way to establish agency because they clearly define the expectations of both parties. They also provide documentation that demonstrates the relationship if questions arise during the transaction. B. Implied agreements. While express agreements are the most common method of creating agency relationships, agency can also arise through implied agreements. An implied agency relationship occurs when the actions of the parties demonstrate an intent to create an agency relationship even though no written agreement exists. Courts may recognize implied agency when a client reasonably believes that a real estate professional is representing them based on the agent's conduct. This situation can occur when an agent provides advice, negotiates on behalf of a party, or acts in a way that suggests representation without clearly defining the relationship. For example, imagine a buyer attending several property showings with a real estate agent in Phoenix. The agent provides detailed advice about negotiating strategies, recommends inspection specialists, and communicates with listing agents on the buyer's behalf. If the buyer reasonably believes that the agent is representing them as their agent, a court could determine that an implied agency relationship exists, even if no written agreement was signed. Implied agency relationships can create significant legal risks because fiduciary duties may arise without the agent fully realizing that the relationship exists. For this reason, professional best practice is to clearly define agency relationships through written agreements and avoid situations where representation could be misunderstood. C. Agency forms and documentation. Documentation plays a critical role in clearly establishing agency relationships and preventing misunderstandings during real estate transactions. Real estate professionals often use standardized forms and agreements to define the agency relationship and outline the responsibilities of the parties involved. These documents help ensure that clients understand who represents them and what services the agent will provide. In Arizona, agency relationships are commonly established through written agreements such as listing agreements, buyer-broker agreements, and other brokerage representation documents. These forms clarify the scope of representation and identify the brokerage responsible for the transaction. Proper documentation also supports compliance with the Arizona Administrative Code Title IV, Chapter 28, which requires brokers to supervise licensees and maintain transaction records under AAC R428. 1103. For example, a brokerage operating in the Phoenix metropolitan area may require agents to upload signed agency agreements into a transaction management system within a specific time frame after execution. This documentation allows brokers to verify that agency relationships are clearly established and properly recorded. Clear documentation protects both the client and the agent by eliminating confusion about who represents whom during the transaction. D. Information obtained during listing presentations. One of the most sensitive stages in the creation of an agency relationship occurs during the listing presentation. During this stage, a real estate professional meets with a property owner to discuss the potential listing of the property and to explain how the brokerage would market the home. Although a listing agreement may not yet be signed, important information is often shared during this conversation. Sellers may disclose financial circumstances, motivation for selling, or details about the property's condition. Because of the nature of these discussions, agents must treat the information obtained during listing presentations with care and professionalism. Even before a formal agency relationship is established, licensees should avoid disclosing confidential information learned during these conversations. For example, if a homeowner in Chandler reveals during a listing presentation that they must sell quickly due to a job relocation, that information should not be shared with potential buyers or other agents without the seller's consent. Respecting the confidentiality of information shared during listing presentations demonstrates professionalism and helps establish trust between the agent and the prospective client. When the listing agreement is ultimately signed, the agency relationship becomes formalized and fiduciary duties are fully established. Discussion questions. Why is an express written agreement considered the safest method for creating an agency relationship in real estate transactions? Answer: because written agreements clearly define the agency relationship, outline responsibilities, and prevent misunderstandings about who represents the client. How can an implied agency relationship unintentionally arise during real estate transactions? Answer: when an agent provides advice, negotiates on behalf of a party, or acts in ways that lead a consumer to reasonably believe the agent is representing them. Why should agents treat information shared during listing presentations carefully, even before a formal agency relationship is established? Answer: because sensitive information shared during the meeting could affect negotiations or the seller's position in the market if disclosed improperly.